Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my top 10 monsters in Monster Hunter Countdown. This is going to be quite interesting. It's going to be a very interesting list. I'm going to be talking about monsters from basically every generation of Monster Hunter in this, including some from the new game. So this list is basically going to be based off my opinion. If you don't like it, that's too bad. I'm telling you my opinion anyway. So without further ado, let's get this started. Chris is the only Monster Hunter Tri-Monster on this list for primarily one reason. In Monster Hunter 4, most of the monsters are very well balanced with the increased verticality of the environments, and it's a very even fight, seeing that the hunters can jump off everything as well. However, that's not to say the Logiasaurus isn't a slouch. The Logiasaurus exists just to show you how much you suck underwater. Yes, the swimming mechanics in Monster Hunter Tri were terrible, which puts the Logiasaurus this low on the list. Also, if you hear me say Logiasaurus or Lagiacrus, that's because, I pronounce it both ways, so that doesn't really matter. However, it's fast and agile with some powerful attacks like firing lightning orbs, electrical storms, a water blight inducing corkscrew charge, a tail slap that can also inflict water blight, a basic bite and claw attack, and it has the mother of all hated moves, the damned hip check. Now, to make it worse, it has an electrical version of the hip check, and that is extremely powerful. The only thing that makes this fight balanced is when you fight it on land. Enough said. What can I say about this thing besides it being an amphibious frog shark? Oh yeah, now I remember. Its design is amazing. The Zamtrios even has some cool actions to boot. It has Frost Breath, Frost Balls, a quick spinning tail slap, a Jaws-inspired charge move, not to mention when it gets real mad, it hardens its body into armor, so he gets this basic horn on the front of his head, and that just makes it even more intimidating because shots will start to reflect off your weapons if you don't have the right sharpness. But that's not even his final form, as Cell would say, so to speak. It also puffs up like a frog at times. And in that stage, every hit seems to be a critical. Now, even though every hit in that stage seems to be a critical, this thing will roll around and roll right over anything that gets in its way. The Zamtrios is just one of those monsters that are awesome. Now we have our first Elder Dragon on the list, and this one by far is my least favorite in Monster Hunter 4. The Acantor, in my opinion, just looks bland. Yes, the Acantor is basically the daddy of all TRex, but the TRex just looks better. However, the Acantor packs a hell of a punch. Remember how I said it looks like a TRex? Yeah, there's a reason. It has some of the moves of the TRex too. It has the TRex-like charge move, but that's about it. Aside from that, the Acantor has the ability to burrow underground to cause fire blight. It can create fire pillars when it's angry, can pin you to the ground if you're not careful, and breathe on you. That hurts you so much. I've been under that I don't know how many times. And it's got a powerful sonic beam that does loads of damage on G rank. And much like the TRex, its roar is one of the few to hurt you in the game. Yes, its roar hurts you. This monster can be quite scary if no one is prepared properly, and if you're not prepared to deal with it with at least maybe one other person, you're going to have a tough time taking it down on your own. Remember how I said the TRex was better? Well, it's only better by one spot. However, the TRex is definitely one tough customer. Fast moving and agile, the TRex dishes out pain faster than you could say ow with a variety of moves like leaps, roars that hurt you, and the god-awful tail swipe, and his favorite charge attack, which can charge you up to 3 times. And when it gets mad, be prepared to fight its onslaught because it takes the terrain it fights in to its max advantage. It will leap, jump off of walls, which is very rare, but it does happen. It will leap off higher pillars just to deal any sort of damage to you. Not to mention, it turns red when it gets angry, which just makes the thing even more intimidating. And it becomes even more of a walking weapon this way. But when you finally kill it, it's completely worth it. Now we come to our second Elder Dragon on the list, and holy hell, this thing defines what a dragon is. The Fatalis, this giant beast, is capable of dealing out so much damage in so little time. From a Powder Blast, which can inflict Blast Blight, which gives you even more damage if you are hit while Blast Blighted, Fireballs, even a nuke. Yes, this thing can fire a nuke. The Fatalis is not to be taken lightly. Unlike most Elder Dragons, though, the Fatalis moves change whether it is on all 4 legs or 2 legs, much like its cousin, the Dire Miralis from Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. On all 4, it can do everything like shoot fire, from a massive flamethrower to the hated Snap Drag, where it bites and drags its body along with it. Twice! On 2 legs, it sticks mainly to slapping you with its tail, thank God it's not as bad as it was in Freedom Unite, and shooting fireballs. It can even fly, though it's not as annoying in Freedom Unite when it does fly, because granted you could still hit its legs. So that's good. And unlike some Elder Dragons in the game, you get access to the almighty Dragonator, the most powerful dragon repelling, dragon killing weapon in the game. Not to mention, in every single thing, with the exception of 2 monsters in the game, you can mount this beast to deal some massive extra damage. But yes, the Fatalis, in conclusion, if you're not prepared, you're dead. I don't know how to describe this monster except just by calling this Lightning Wolf a Super Saiyan. An extremely fast and powerful monster, the Zinogre can combo lock you into pain. With moves that shoot thunderbugs, quick claw strikes, body slams, and tail smashes, the Zinogre does all of it on top of performing ridiculous acrobatics just to show off. It inflicts Thunderblight, which makes you more susceptible to being stunned, and when you make this wolf mad, it goes Super Saiyan by charging up its electricity on its back. However, you can get bugs off this thing's back to remove its charge, although I always find it more effective just to beat the ever-living hell out of it. However, if you make it mad while it's in its insanely charged state, this wolf goes from Super Saiyan to Super Saiyan 2. And when that happens, God help you. Three words. Fast moving eagle. The Serragos is one of the newest monsters introduced into the franchise, and by God is this a freaking cool monster. It's a cross between a dragon and an eagle, and if its attacks weren't bad enough with its talons and spikes, this thing can inflict a new type of blight known as bleed damage. Now, what bleed damage does is if you try running while you are bleeding, your health will consistently drain, and it's even worse on G rank. There are only two ways to counter bleed damage. You have to either pound a well-done steak, or you have to crouch on the ground for a few seconds. Now, as threatening as it may be, the Serragos is a pretty easy monster. However, when you first encounter this thing, the game force abandons the quest you were on. That's saying something, and rightfully so, seeing that the Serragos can deal out a hell of a lot of damage. But the fact that it's an eagle just makes this monster one of the coolest things. Oh, and by the way, it has an apex form. Oh my god, this monster is huge. At a length of over 40,000 centimeters, the Dama Door is the only monster in the entire Monster Hunter franchise to have two lock-on target icons. With its massive size, the Dama Door is able to not only not be mounted, as it's one of the two monsters that cannot be mounted in the game, but it's so big it can be jumped on. Yes, the Dama Door can be jumped on, and you can beat the ever-living hell out of whichever part on it you want when you're on top of it. With some very powerful attacks on top of that, such as the ability to summon meteors that it likes to spam consistently, especially when it's mad, a meteor beam that he can combo up to twice, which is slow but strong, claw swipes, which are also slow but strong, and even a stage crunching bite, which you have to dodge over half of the time if you're too close, because the hitbox on that bite is huge. However, you're going to have a tough time beating this thing on your own. It's definitely recommended to have at least 3 people to beat this. But if you're able and up to the challenge with your friends, it's basically one of the most fun monsters to fight. And on top of that, you get anti-dragon bombs, which are meant to literally blow its face up. Now, it seems to have an interesting ability as well with it. When you're close to its chest, it seems to give off some sort of negative energy, which drains your health. So, it's never really explained what that is. I can't even figure it out what it is yet. But, as long as you're with friends, this monster is totally worth it, and this monster is one of my favorites. let's talk about the flagship monster of the game. The Ghorm Aguila is a blind frenzy dragon that inflicts the blight known as Frenzy. Frenzy is a virus in the game that powers up monsters, giving them increased damage, even though they have a shorter lifespan. There's also another form of Apex, which I discussed earlier, which powers up the monsters even further. However, in this, any monster that's frenzied can inflict this new type of virus on you called, obviously, Frenzy. What Frenzy does is going to have two effects. If you are overtaken by the Frenzy, you will receive increased damage, and you will lose any slight extra recovery health that you had. That's like that little extra red area in your health. However, if you manage to overcome the Frenzy by damaging the monster enough, you get an increased crit. You basically get an infinity increase, and I believe it's a 15% affinity increase to your weapon, if I'm not mistaken. However, that's just the effect of Frenzy. We haven't even discussed the monster yet. The Ghorm Aguila itself has extremely powerful attacks, from charges, frenzy shots, frenzy pillars in the Shaggaroo form, tail slaps, claw swipes, everything. Now, I did say it just had a second form. Its second form is an Elder Dragon, known as the Shaggaroo Aguila. The Shaggaroo Aguila is basically a Ghorm Aguila that has fully matured. It is no longer blinded. It has eyes, 2 horns, and it's freaking gold. Not as gold as the Serragos, but this thing will blind you. Doesn't have any move to blind you, but this monster just looks amazing. And the soundtrack that plays when you fight this monster is absolutely amazing. Go look up sometime the reincarnation of Light and Darkness Monster Hunter 4, because that is what that is, and that is a fantastic theme. However, that's not to say it's an easy fight by any means. No, the Ghorm Aguila is probably easily one of the hardest monsters in the game, and that's not counting his Chaos form, which is half Gore, half Shaggaroo. Try and wrap your head around that one. And at last we come to our final monster on the list, the Brachydios. The Brachydios, by far, is my favorite monster ever. Its design is amazing. It is a brute wyvern, and it is one of the first brute wyverns to actually use his hands to fight, because usually brute wyvern's hands are kind of stubby. Just look at the Devil Joe and the Broth from Monster Hunter 3. Those were crap, by the way. The Devil Joe's still just easy. But it's a brute wyvern that inflicts the ailment known as slime. Now, what slime is, it's basically a very potent explosive, which you don't want to get hit by. It was downgraded to Blast Blight, unfortunately, because it had been nerfed, which kind of sucks, because when it got nerfed, it was, a lot of people weren't happy about that. Even though it did kind of ruin the game for me a little bit in 3 Ultimate, I still enjoyed using any slime weapon it had, and I still actually use them. But that's enough about the weapons I use, and the armor I use for that matter. I use a full Brachydios set, but I keep talking about it, don't I? Okay, moving on to the Brachydios' moveset. The Brachydios' moveset is basically based around his slime potency. The Brachydios can do a 5-charge punch. He can put his head in the ground to create a giant slime puddle. He can swing his tail, which is really nothing. He has a massive acrobatic leap. And he's got a lot of other moves as well on top of that. When he gets mad, all of his slime becomes explosive. Yes, his slime becomes explosive. And what is this slime actually made out of? The Brachydios' slime is actually made of its saliva, which is kind of disgusting when you think about it. But at the same time, it's kind of cool, because it makes it one of the more unique monsters of the game. However, The Brachydios even has another form in the subspecies known as the Raging Brachydios, which unfortunately I have not gotten the chance to fight yet in the game, but from what I know, it's always in raged form, and when it gets enraged, parts of its body turn red, and as soon as you hit them, they explode, giving you little time to dodge out of the way. But yeah, I honestly can't wait to fight that. It should be quite an interesting monster, to say the least. But the Brachydios itself, I mean, it's not a bad monster to fight. It's a very evenly matched monster with you, I would say, if you are experienced enough in the game. And by the point you fight it in the game, you should be experienced enough to take it down. But I definitely recommend anybody making Brachydios weapons and armor, because they are actually very potent against a lot of monsters in the game, which makes the Brachydios my favorite monster of the entire Monster Hunter franchise. I am CAJman777, and I am a Monster Hunter.